Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host. I am joined tonight by Adam Camilleri.
Hey man, dude, I love how you do that. Your whole intro thing is phenomenal.
Man, thanks for joining.
If no one has said that to you before, it's fantastic.
I
Keep up the good work.
This is like the vacation episode. We're recording this on an alternate day, alternate time, and thank you very much for joining me.
Well, geez, two times in 2 weeks, or it's been 3 weeks, but yeah. Thanks for having me back again, dude. Really stoked.
I think you can bring an interesting perspective. I mean, we talked about a lot of things that we had in common, but I want to hear about what's going on in your scene. What you're seeing in tournaments, what you're taking to your next tournament. I know that towards the first of the year, you're planning like a big Warhammer extravaganza trip. I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, so I've booked my ticket to the LVO, so I'm flying across the freaking globe, going to come to the LVO. I'm planning to make it, well, if I'm going to, spend $1,600 on a plane ticket, I'm going to make it worth it. So I'm planning to come over for January, for probably the whole month of January, possibly into February as well. I've put some feelers out to try and get a ticket to Charity Hammer because I'm pretty good mates with Mitch P from the Best in Faction guys. I'm trying to leverage a bit of my goodwill there to get a ticket. And even if I don't, I plan to just go and just hang out with those guys. It's a really good way to meet a lot of the forerunners and the trendsetters in the scene. Kind of, I don't know, just get to know some good dudes.
That's in Seattle, right? So that's still on the West Coast?
Yeah, on the West Coast. So apart from, the other stops, of course, I'm pretty sure I want to meet and shake hands with some of the frontline gaming guys. They need some help building some terrain. I'll go build some goodwill there, put some heads in. We've got a bit of a reputation of being good dudes around ETC and stuff. We're always the team that helps set up on the day before. We're always up for doing some grunt work. So I'm trying to keep that reputation alive. Maybe I'll go help build some terrain for LVO or just stick my head in and say hello to those dudes. And yeah, I might hit up some GTs, hit up some pre-LVO events.
So what do you plan on bringing? Do you know yet?
Not really. I have an idea. So one of my favorite unit in the game, I think, in the absolute everything in the game right now, is Alarus Terminators from Custodes. That's my favorure unit.
They look good.
They look phenomenal, firstly, and that's always a big plus for me. If a unit looks good and it plays good, there's no doubts in my mind. What I love about them is, I talk about this on some of the other medias I'm on. There's two ceilings on a unit. There's how good a unit can be straight out of the box, like no synergies, no nothing. Just literally, its war gear, its stat line, its special rules. That's its first ceiling on how good it can be. The second ceiling is how good you can make it, with stratagems, psychic powers, tactics, nuance, all those things. The ceiling on Alarus Terminators, the second ceiling on Alarus Terminators, is one of the highest in the game. It's absolutely ridiculous what you can make that unit do.
I'm curious. What's making you say that?
Okay, so firstly, they kind of break the game by one of their special rules. So you've got a special rule that says they can pile in and consolidate towards characters, not the closest unit. So that means, like, let's say I am model to model with another unit, but you have a character giving that unit a buff behind them. Every turn, I can pile in 3 inches and consolidate 3 inches along your unit, get behind you and kill that character. Stuff like that. They break the game to a clever player who's willing to set themselves up properly in the movement phase. You can literally break the phases of the game.
And they can get flamers and stuff, right? So they're like a pretty versatile unit?
Unfortunately, no. They
don't get the flamers?
No, they don't get the flamers. These are the ones strictly from the codex. So the Forge ones don't get all the crazy stratagems these guys do. On top of that, naturally, there's the completely insane and so freaking good Tanglefoot Grenade. So that's the one where you, in your opponent's charge phase or movement phase or charge phase, you can minus D6 from their movement or their charge. So if someone tries and charges that unit, you can minus D6 from them. You can Tanglefoot them if they try and fall back. One I've been working on, I've been cooking up a bit, is to use the Thunderfire Cannon. So let's say I've got a unit that I really want to kill said unit, but I don't want to get shot by your 3 Crusaders or whatever. I charge your scouts and I kill them, and then I pile in, I tap another unit. I hit that unit with a Thunderfire Cannon in the previous turn, and then when you fall back, all I need to do is roll a 3 and you can't fall back. So you can't fall back from the Alarus unit. So I halve your movement in my turn with the Thunderfire Cannon stratagem, so you go from movement 6 down to movement 3, and then I Tanglefoot you and I roll a 3, you can't fall back from it because you can't end ball them each way.
Oh, that's pretty dirty.
So, yeah, it's phenomenally good. You can also do that with the Wyvern stratagem, and you can also now do that with the Phobos Libby psychic power. So you can just get really janky, man. I can walk in and charge, Bexilla, Teleport Homer, charge, kill some unit of Bulgrin, which is something really good at killing other Death Star units or other big bull units. And then I just consolidate and I tap some character. I can't wrap him. I didn't have enough movement, but I don't need to because I've halved its movement with the Libby psychic power. And then I roll a 3. So all I need to do is just not roll a 1 or a 2 on a d6, and that guy can't fall back.
Well, why are they good at killing Death Star units? Because of high damage, high AP? What's happening there?
Yeah, so very reliable, hitting on 2s like all others, and their strength 8 -2 can go to -3 with a stratagem, D3 damage. I hate D3 damage. I'd just so much rather it was just flat 2, man. Yeah, so they've got 4 attacks each, hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s versus anything except a knight. -3 on the rend if you pay a CP. And then, of course, you add like a Trajan or you add a shield captain, and they're re-rolling to hit once to wound. And so so I think it's eight Alarus with Trajan will down a knight. They'll just do, I think, 26 to 27 wounds to a knight in a turn. I think that's only with the -2. That's not with the -3 rend.
Yeah, but that's like 30, 40 wounds to an ogre. That's a unit.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what I mean. So yeah, on top of that, they've got the stratagem where they get for 2 CP, they can split into single model units. So if you take a unit of, let's say I'm playing against, like I said before, the triple Crusaders. Yeah, 3 Crusaders shooting into a unit of eight Alarus or any 8 Custodes. They all do a freaking number on them. They will poleaxe you. They will gut them down. But if that unit of 8 guys is now 8 single dudes, each one of them has 4 wounds, toughness 5, a 4 up invulnerable save, 2 up armor, and they're all -1 to hit around a Vexilla, and you've got to waste 1 whole rapid fire battle cannon on 1 guy instead of that rapid fire battle cannon possibly killing 2, maybe 3 dudes. That's an immense return on value right there.
I hadn't even thought about that. And then this army obviously travels very well because you're looking at, 25 Terminator models.
Yeah, exactly right. You can just put it in your pocket. It's my army. Pull it out on the table. There we go. The only issue is it's a massive amount of points. They are 70, I think they're 79 points apiece. So there's not a hell of a lot you're bringing with them. But naturally, like, they just need a Vexilla for the -1, and for the teleport home stratagem. And I'm assuming you know what that one is, Paul.
No, I do, yeah. And the Vexilla is so underrated too. I mean, it gives everyone in a radius -1 to hit. I mean, you can do multiple things, but it makes people harder to hit. And when you've got high armor save, decent toughness number of wounds, it accumulates on itself to be a really difficult nut to crack.
Exactly right. It's just adding another layer of defensiveness. So past that, there's another. They've got a stratagem where they get to be snipers. You pay, I think it's 1 or 2 CP, and then they get to shoot characters. So couple that. If I was to take that with an assassin's attachment, I'd take 1 or 2 Vindicares, and all of a sudden I can kill demon princes. So that's one thing that Vindicares can't do. They can't pop. You need like 3 Vindicares to have even like a 50-50 chance of popping a demon prince. Whereas you take 8 Alarus, 1 or 2 Vindicares, you'll down that demon prince. You'll down a demon prince a turn. If they take sorcerers, you'll down a sorcerer. You'll kill Araman, and you'll scratch something else, because each Alarus has a rapid fire range. They have 2 strength 4 -1 2 damage shots, and then D3 strength 4 -3 1 damage shots from each one. So that's a unit of 8. That's 16. Essentially the mastercrafted bolt rifle profile, and then 8 D3. So on average, that's another 16 strength 4 -3 shots, rerolling 1s to hit, 1s to wound. That's pretty good at killing, especially like you think about that versus a Genestealer cult. You think about that versus guard armies with all those squishy characters like Strachan, like priests, Primaris Psychers and stuff, Buffett Bulgrin. All of a sudden, you've got this one unit that's not only great at killing characters already, but it starts pulling apart synergy from your opponent.
Yeah, I haven't seen them run in that number yet. I mean, I've seen them 2 or 3 here and there, but not 8 that you're suggesting. I mean, are you legitimately suggesting that as a meta breaker?
Yes and no. The problem is, like, they get counted out in return, unfortunately. So you got to be good at protecting them, and you got to couple them with the right things to make sure that you get value out of it. Because they are, if you take them in your list, that means you're also taking 180 points worth of Trajan Valorous, and you're taking like 140 points, 130-ish, whatever, of a Vexilla. So all of a sudden, this is 1,000 points just for this. So if your whole other 1,000 points has to enable this 1,000 points to do what it does. Right now, I'm still tossing up whether they're actually worth it, or whether I dump them down and replace them with Wardens. So I'm trying to find them. So Wardens have the same damage output as Alarus. They have exactly the same. They have 4 attacks with the axe, which is the same strength 8 -2 D3 damage. Exactly the same profile, damage output wise. Resilience wise, they're not quite as good. They've got 3 wounds instead of 4 wounds, but they've got a 6 up, feel no pain, and which actually mitigates that quite well. So I'm trying to figure out whether I'm better off taking a middle-sized unit of Alarus and then like a chunky-sized unit of Wardens, because the same number of Wardens still kills a knight. So 8 Alarus kill a knight, 8 Wardens kill a knight.
But I mean, but do you feel? I mean, know we're using knight as just like a litmus test, a metric to what it can kill.
Yeah.
I mean, because the knight meta, I mean, my experience so far is that the knights have all but evaporated. I mean, you're going to see them and they'll be spoiler lists, but they've gone now at best they're that gatekeeper list. Yeah,
well, that's exactly right. I mean, the only real viable builds right now, I think, for the perception is that the viable builds for knights is either a gallant, three Crusaders, or a couple of wardens
or
and
three
Craft
gallants.
Crusader.
I think we're going to see 3.
Yeah, I love 3 gallants. I'd actually I expect to see gallants come back when the Renegade book comes in, because I'm expecting like Chaos Knights to be able to get a bunch more attacks from wacky stuff like being corn and getting rage on the charge and stuff like that.
Being angry, just being evil.
Yeah.
At least one more attack.
Plus one attack, you are furious. I think that's a misnomer. I think knights are fine, and I'll just put this out there. This is Adam's ring-a-ding big call of the day. Castellans aren't dead, people. I'm literally waiting for the mech, everyone to get so carried away and so crazy into the mech builds, and then some crazy be like, I think Castellans are good again. Brings it and just poleaxes everybody.
Now, they aren't bad, but it's just that now that they've kind of, you're not going to see them as quite as frequently as they were, because they're not going to automatically win games anymore.
Well, so my wording there was Castellans aren't dead. I think everyone's perception is that they are dead, that they are unviable, unusable. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's not correct. I think they are very, very much usable. Whether they're still worth their points, that's kind of remains to be seen. But they're not dead, that's for sure.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I can only tell you, I'm talking about what I've seen so far in the actual tournaments themselves. But it's one of those things like, we talk about it and, it plays out a certain way, but whatever. We'll see how it goes. I think that you using the knights as a metric, it's what you're really saying is something that has high toughness, a decent save, and a high number of wounds. What can take it? And the same thing applies. If you can take that, you could take other Death Star units. Like you could wipe out an Ogre, and you could wipe out, my baby, the Stormlord.
Yeah, well, exactly.
There's lots you can do with that profile.
Same parallel. I suppose it's similar. The GEQ, TEQ, MEQ terms.
KEQ.
Like, no, we are now. I'm talking KEQ pretty much.
All right.
That's my thinking so far. I would love to take a big Alarus or big teched up Custodes list. I think that'd just be a lot of fun. Just because I like versatility, but I don't want to be taking my I've got 10,500 points in painted Cadians. I'm not taking those Stelvio. I'm not putting those. I'm not taking like 3 cases of Guardsmen over.
Hey man,
and to try and figure out what I want to take.
My army list fits in a 420 Battlefront 420.
Really?
It's almost travel. Yeah. And that's with a couple of vultures and the Baneblade.
What's your opinions of the G-dub cases?
Okay, they're decent size, but it's hard to get your army in the foam. So I think you need to get creative. But I like the durability of them in the size. I just don't like the foam configuration.
I'm not a fan of the foam. The case is fine. The clasps, I've had some issues with a couple of mine. It was all with the handle, because I've been using one for the last 2 years, but it's mostly just for local stuff. But I find the foam. If you have, I won't put metal models in there anymore, because as soon as you hold the actual thing upright, they'll slide down the foam inserts, and then if they're jostled around, they'll rub on each other, and all of a sudden you've lost paint. And I'll never do that again. I had a bunch of special weapons Cadians do that to each other, and I was just like, nah.
When
never.
You pick it up,
never
you just
again.
hear it. You just hear it moving inside. You're just like, oh man.
Yeah.
Deal with that when we get where we're going.
Exactly right. That's not good. That's not good at all.
I do love the durability of the case, though. I think, and it's got a nice little look to it, or whatever. But I think the foam, you got to get you have to kind of configure the foam yourself if you're going to be using it. But
no, that's fair.
I do plan. I try to plan my travel armies based on what I can comfortably get in a carry-on. Like I travel most places with my laptop, so that's like one carry-on thing. I can't change that because I got to do this, or I got to do some work or whatever. And so what I carry from an army has to fit in that overhead.
Yeah, very true. Well, I'm currently figuring out how I'm going to transport my Tau army. I've got a Tau army I'm taking to Europe with me in 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm jetting off to Europe in 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to transport this Tau army, because there's some big models for Tau, and some of the ones I'm
yet?
I do have a solution. I'm not sure if I like it. It's good enough though.
Yeah.
The same army that I borrowed the army off the mate who my mate who took a towel to ETC last year for Australia. And so it comes in the same case as his, but his case is too big to go and carry on. And I don't like the idea of me taking someone else's army and just chucking it in the bottom of the ship.
That is such a stressful ride when you're worrying about if your army's going to be.
I just said ship there, because that's the only way Australians get overseas still. Like, you still have to get to Australia by ship. So I'm just going to be jumping on a tanker and off to Europe. That's why I have to leave like 3 weeks early for ETC, because we don't have planes. I'm just joking.
Like, I almost believe it. I'm like, you know what? That makes sense.
It was just sail ships. That's the only way to get here. You got to come around the Cape of Good Hope and take a left at the Sea Demons, and you get to Australia.
And then you get stuck in customs for 2.5 weeks. You know. So,
yeah. Because like this. We all saw what happened with cane toads, you freaking idiots. I can't believe they thought that was a good idea.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So we had this problem. So sugarcane is one of the biggest industries in Australia.
Okay.
Growing sugar. And so there was this sugarcane beetle that comes there and eats all the sugarcane. And they brought over by a ship by accident, introduced. It was wrecking all the crops and stuff. And so they found this beetle, this toad that literally eats everything. And we're like, we'll bring this in to kill the beetles. And so they brought it in to kill the beetles, and it ate some of the beetles and everything else. And it's an unstoppable juggernaut of killing. Yeah. It's called a cane toad, and they're like an actual monster. They're these massive toads that like breed prolifically are poisonous. So that every actual animal in Australia that can eat one dies. And we have nothing to stop them. They're gonna rule us. The next Prime Minister is a cane toad.
I'll put a link in the show notes for the cane toads.
Yeah. There should be an army. There'll be the next 40k army released, because in the 41st millennium there is the toads have evolved to be sentient, because they've just been untouched on Australia and just dominated the continent. For like 10,000
they're looking for Shadespire ideas. Warhammer Underworld's
why not?
cane toads.
Cane toads. It's sick. It's like the Skaven, but better.
Or maybe for Necromunda. I think, don't the Goliaths have like an alligator or a crocodile or something?
Yeah, they do, don't they?
The next thing is cane toads.
Cane toads, yeah, poisonous cane toads. Just throw them. I would just be some guy to be licking them for trips, psychic powers.
That sounds horrific. So were these native to Australia, or did you have to import them from somewhere else?
No, they introduced them. They introduced them to kill the beetles that were killing the sugarcane. And then they made a small dent into the beetles, and then just like rampaged to native.
So they decided they're going to eat like coyotes and antelopes.
All the little fish, all the little insects, all the native. They actually eat everything. They eat like snakes. They eat other lizards, other toads, other frogs. Yeah, freaking everything. They're actually phenomenal.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, it's a long journey from protecting your Tau, but it all kind of fits. I mean, the Tau look like they're amphibious.
Yeah, well, they're fish cows, man. They're tuna beef.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, fair enough.
Gills and hooves. They're like if Mr. Tumnus, the fawn from Narnia, hooked up with some kind of amphibious oxalotl.
Can you talk about your list for the ETC?
No, not yet. We're still a week from submission. So it literally if we would have this conversation this time next week, 100% we're good.
There you go. Spoiler world, it won't fit in a carry-on.
So did we discuss this last time? Australia's ETC, like we legitimately have got the best players in Australia going to ETC for the first time, which is something we've never been able to do before. Pete Platel, the captain, and I sat down when he asked me to be pretty much his vice captain. He asked me if we thought it was actually viable to try and get an actual top shelf Australian side. And for this first time this year, we did. We think we've got at least, of the top 5 players in Australia, we probably have 4 of them.
Okay, well, I mean, that's still really good.
Yeah, of the top 20 players, we've got 8 of them. We've got 8 of the top 20 players in Australia. So if we bomb out this year, we're all just going to pack up and go home. We're done.
Oh, man, there's so many factors involved. I mean, there's the fatigue of travel. There's matchups. There's so many contributing factors to maybe not winning every single one of the rounds. But all the best you can do is just position yourself the best you can.
That's all you can do, man. Just put in the best effort you can beforehand, get all the points you can during the games, then just rely on your team to do the same. Yeah. But I think we did talk about it last time, so I won't spend too much time on it this time. If you were to go to LVO, if LVO was next week, Paul, what would you take?
That's tough. I think I would take this guard list or something similar to what the guard list I'm running right now. Only because I've had such success with take all comers. I don't have really very many bad matchups. I was really worried about fighting the KEQs, and even the flyers. I was worried about how I was going to match up against them, but, I've just got enough bullets I can sling down there and hopefully make something happen. And then the secondaries for ITC missions, the secondaries that I can pick, I can typically pick reliable ones where I can score my 12 points, and I have to make you really struggle to get your 12 points against me.
Yeah. So, I like that ITC is getting to the time when people are really starting to optimize for the missions. Like, mission optimization is just like a thing that you do now. You don't even think about it. And I've always been a big proponent of, denying your opponent points is worth 2 points to you. So, like, that's a good opinion, man. Yeah, every point that I make you unable to get is worth 2 points to me, because every point I get means one extra, because I've already denied you one. I personally like running lists where it discourages you from playing the way you want to play. So so for the ATC for Australia, I took a tower list, like I said. I took 3 units of hazard suits. And they're bonkers, by the way. Any tower players out there, go get some freaking hazard suits. They're absolutely insane. So each one has two twin burst cannons. Each one has 16 heavy bolter shots, essentially. And
it can move and shoot. Like, it's...
Yeah, they're assault weapons. They're only 18-inch, but they're assault weapons. So you've got a 26-inch range, 26-inch threat range plus D6 if you wanted to advance, or Moncar. So I took 3 units of those. Now, the big deal about those is that they're -2 to charge. So I played an army where every single unit in my army had fly. So every model had the fly keyword. And then I picked tables where I could that had a lot of forests, had a lot of craters. And a lot of the time my captain of the Victorian team was using me to try and play against aggressive lists. And it was really, really heinous to my opponents when I played Orcs, I played GSC, and they'd come with their big aggressive lists that are, I got 150 boys, I'm going to swamp you. Except that when you deep strike and you're +2 to charge, well, now you're -2 to charge, because I'm -2 to charge. And then I've deployed everything behind my hazard suits, and my hazard suits are in forests. They're like 1.1 inch in from a forest. So now you bombed in and you're not +2 to charge, you're -2 to charge, because I'm -4 to charge. And so it's just, on top of that, you take 48 strength 5 shots from each unit, and they're all within 6 inches of each other. And it was just layers of discouraging people to play the way they want their armies.
Yeah, you're just grinding down units in their turn.
Well, that's the thing. So, firstly, you got to ask yourself: can my army connect with this army? Let's say it can. Like, it's I played against Gene Stillicott, and he played the Muscle Beach. Like, I think he had 17 or 18 aberrants. So, can my army connect with this army? And that means, can it make it there through -4 to charge, -4 to charge? Can it make it through the Overwatch, which is at a minimum 48 strength 5 shots times 3, plus a couple of Riptide, plus a couple of Suit Commanders? When it gets there, can it do enough meaningful damage through 30 shield drones that it was worth charging in the first place? Because you can't lock me down and wrap me because I've got fly. So if you can't answer yes to all those questions, you don't even bother charging, because you just lose efficacy in my turn for no gain.
Man, that sounds miserable.
It was miserable. I won. I got 91 out of 100 possible points out of that tournament, and I played against a Gene Stillicott guy, and he's a genuinely good player. But I got to deploy in this one big crater. This one small crater and one big crater. I deployed my entire army in. And then he had one turn, he tried to charge his big Muscle Beach Aberrant Death Star. Out of his, I think, 15 or 16 of them, only 3 Aberrants and what's the special character? Abominant?
Yeah, the Abominant, yeah.
They're the only ones that made it into combat. So 3 Aberrants and 1 Abominant out of 15 or 16 guys made it through my Overwatch and passed the charge, made it to a Riptide. And of course, I knew he was the only one he could charge. So I turned the 3+ Invuln up. So he got there, bounced, I fell back, wiped him, he conceded. And that was like, that was turn 2. It's just heinous. Like when you can manipulate your matchups, like you can in team events, and like my captain and the guy who did the pairings, like they used my army very, very well, to pin aggressive armies. So if you had an aggressive horde, list that was very strong and you put it up to be paired, we'd put me in a Death Watch list into it. So their Orc army, they had the choice of either playing against like 50 Death Watch vets that still had the Bolter rule at the time, or they could play against the Tower. And that guy chose the Tower. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, it was like you give him the choice between the giant turd and the sandwich,
It's like
so to speak.
stepping on a trap, man. To answer your question earlier, to not seem like I'm avoiding the question, if I was brewing a list, like just a brand new list, I think I would try to make demons work.
Wow, dude, awesome! Like, what flavor would you go with? The kind of JV style? Would you go with a mono god? What's your shtick?
I think if you want to win games, you put in your 400 points, 600 points of Nurgle. Like you can win some games just on the back of that. But then what you've really got on the other side of that is 1,400 points of spiciness.
Yeah. There is so much tech. There's so many tech options you can chuck into a demons list. It's phenomenal. So you mean like the 600 point baseline buy-in being like 60 to 90 plague bearers and the 2 or 3 heralds?
Yeah, a couple characters to give you the buffs and the extra rolls and a couple psychic powers and that kind of stuff. And then I would start playing with that 1,400 points. And I think that there's some Slaanesh magic that hasn't necessarily been captured yet, because there's things you can do like to prevent the fallbacks, and they've got some really cool powers, and then the greater demon being able to like consolidate and attack again and that kind of stuff. I mean, I think there's things to do there that we haven't seen play out yet, because people are hot on these other things, which are awesome. Don't get me wrong, probably like pound for pound better, but you may be able to pull out some tricks and also do that kind of secondary ITC mission, secondary manipulation with some of these the demons.
Well, there was a strat I cooked up with a mate, and I think I yelled about it on one of my podcasts a while ago, but the Forbidden Gem, there is so much play with the Forbidden Gem relic, and I think it's one of the best and strongest relics in the game. For those of you who don't know, that means, so you pick a character in a phase and you roll 3d6. If you exceed their leadership, that character has all their abilities turned off, all their oral abilities turned off for that phase, and can't participate in any way. So some of these big knight characters, like you got a knight, whatever. Let's joke and say it's like a Castellan or a Valiant or whatever.
Turn off Gilliman.
And turn off Gilliman. I think it's only 12-inch range, so you've got to be pretty close. So I personally think unless you're building a very aggressive demons list, it's a better defensive list, a defensive item. So if someone tries to counter attack you, like you're pushing up with all your smites behind your lesser demons and stuff, and then someone tries to push that Bulg and Styrene on you, and then you go either in the charge phase, they try and charge him, and like turn them off in the charge phase, because I think they're only leadership like 7 or 8, so 3d6 it should be easy with a CP or something, and then or you let them charge you, and let's say you positioned yourself to intervene with a bunch of your smiting characters and DPs and stuff, and then you turn them off and stop them from attacking in the combat phase. Sorry, you don't get to attack, but I do. And all these characters that have just intervened with you, just cut your unit in half, and then we smite out the rest of them. I think it's just I don't actually think that's the best play of it. I think the best play of it is the psychological effect for people who know how much it can mess with their plans.
So they move out. They don't get in position.
Exactly right. They don't even try. Yeah, they don't even try because they know you'll just stuff it up. It's like the sword of Damocles hanging above your head, and you're like, I've got this big play, I could do it, and then you're like, oh crap, the gem.
Well, I think there's some play in summoning the reserve points, and I think there's either summoning or doing things like, and I've talked about this before, so I'm not trying to be redundant, but like splitting your horrors. That sounds really laughable if you were to talk about it to people, but when it's that psychological warfare of like, awesome, I've got 180 points saved, so you shot at this pink horror unit because it's really your only viable target and you're trying to keep me from doing a psychic power or whatever. Okay, I just sprinkle out some blue horrors and I sprinkle out some brimstones. Yeah. Like, I didn't kill a unit, he's still on the objective. Heck, he might even be closer to the next objective. What am I even doing with my life?
Yeah, dude. You're talking my language. Summoning is X factor to me. Like it's absolute X factor. But the thing is, your chances of winning and losing that game will live and die off your choices, off your summoning choices. It's exciting, is what it is. It's options, it's freedom, it's versatility.
I just don't think it's a liability as much as we thought it was originally. I think there was in the early days of 8th, it was kind of cool, and then it became like, oh, why would I even try to do that? And then we're kind of at a point now to where that flexibility may help counter some of that weirdness in the meta right now.
Yeah, exactly right. So there was a game at CanCon we streamed down the network, which was Hayden Walduck, who I think ended up coming second or third at CanCon, which is like our LVO. And he played a summoning-based demons list. So he played I think it was a 13 or 1400 point demons list, and he had 600 points of summoning.
Wow. Was he waiting to like summon like a Forge World Greater Demon or something? I mean, I know that's not the point, but like, what was that 600 points in his mind dedicated to?
Well, so I think he had the points set aside to either get a huge unit of plague drones, respawn up to 4 units of lesser demons, so he could do 2 waves of bloodletter bombs or 2 waves of horror bombs. And then he had enough, I was talking to him, and then he had enough to do, I think, a bunch of flamers as well as the plague drones. And there was a couple of other ones as well. He didn't tell me quite all the options he had. He brought this like big suitcase with him with all these different options in it. But the game that we streamed, he versed really quite strong Dark Eldar army. It had like 2 units of Talos, a max unit of Grotesques, all the planes, the Ravagers. And turn 1, I was saying on stream, I think Hayden's cooked because he's lost almost half his Plague Bearers in 1 turn. And then he made the right summoning choices. He summoned in the max unit of Plague Drones, which are really, really good against the Grotesques because they've got like 3 or 4 damage on a 6 to wound, and they don't have any rend, but that doesn't matter because they only have invulns. They're only going into invuln saves. Mm-hmm. Whereas, so he ended up making the right choices with his summoning, and he ended up getting a big win out of that game. So anybody who wants to check that out to see just how big an X factor summoning can be, go check that out on our Twitch or our YouTube, because that's an amazing example of what you can do with something, what you can achieve with it.
I think with a slight investment into making sure you've got the right marks, for what you might encounter. I mean, 500 points, 400 points can go a long way to winning, to throwing people off and winning games.
Incredibly long way. I'm stunned that summoning isn't the amazing tool that it is. But I had this discussion on another podcast. I overheard a discussion. People were saying, how come everyone's losing their mind over assassins, being able to summon an assassin at the start of the game, but no one's losing their mind over demons being able to summon?
That's good. That's a good comparison. Yeah, that had great effect with these assassins.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with choice. Like, it's only 85 points you're putting aside. It's not a couple of hundred. And secondly, there's actually like no bad choice on the assassin.
That stuff for the horrors. I mean, we're talking about 150, 200 points max. And you've blanked your opponent's first maybe 1-2 turns.
Yeah, it's so good, so freaking good, man.
I mean, just to put it out there. I mean, you asked. I mean, that's actually the question. I think if I was like brewing from scratch, that's where I'd be thinking about for a major tournament as a spoiler.
Phenomenal. I started playing Warhammer as a Chaos player, and I think it's going to come time. I was supposed to play Dark Age, so I was going to say it's probably time I come back to Chaos pretty soon because I hear the call. Like,
it's a good time to be wanting to do Chaos right now.
It's a very good time, man.
I got a cool person that asked me to help them build a Black Legion list, and I'm going to have them on to talk about it on the show pretty soon.
It's so sexy.
If they take my advice, or hear about why they didn't take it, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about maybe a little bit more chaos stuff, or what you might be thinking if you were starting from scratch.
No, I've got a hard hitting question for you when you come back, Paul.
Oh, no, sorry, hang on a second.
We're sponsored by Fermaterra. With their sturdy, lightweight and portable tables, you can make war anywhere. Please visit them at www.fermaterra.com.
We are back. Still got Adam here.
Hey, man, still here. I've got a big, thorough, chunky question for you. So there's a lot of people like talking about meta. A lot of people like talking about the different metas. And Australia, we have a really quite unique meta because we're just so far away from everybody else and big place with not a lot of people in it. How would you describe the American meta? Like, is it broken down into sections? Like, where are the territorial meta lines, and what's your perception of the place?
This is dangerous ground. There is. You want to know where I think the hardest meta in North America is?
Yeah, sure.
Wherever Jim Vessel is. That's where.
Dude, the guy's everywhere at the moment. He travels to freaking everywhere.
But no, we definitely have, there is, like the West Coast players think that they are amazing. The Northeast players think that they're amazing. The South is like, it's like Mad Max, different
Sounds like my jam.
Scrapping for, yeah, right. Sorry. I wasn't trying to make.
No, that's perfect.
But it's really all over the place. And then for us, I mean, I don't hear a ton about the Midwest meta-defining stuff, but there is an amazing amount of 40k happening in places like Kentucky and Illinois, and so I mean, U.S. is big. It's difficult for people that don't live over here to know exactly just how big the U.S. is. But you know, for instance, there's a lot of countries that like fit into, like, if you were to take European countries and stack them up next to Texas, you know, it's not even, it's ridiculous, you know. But there definitely are. But the thing, you know, with all the internet and the Facebook groups, people get to communicate, but it's really divided along, you know, what everyone thinks their power, how they rank in the U.S. meta. It's very interesting.
Are there any unique characteristics to the areas? Like, is there any, like, you know, some people say in Australia is a little bit of a divide because New South Wales is very much an ITC heartland. Like, they play ITC missions, they barely play anything else. Vic and Queensland, we tend to be like 50-50 ITC, ETC. WA's pretty much mostly ETC. So is there anything like that going on over there? I mean, I know not the ITC, ETC because everyone's kind of playing ITC, but this kind of the flavor of how people play. Like, some people don't like to play, always like play the net lists, and some people, in some areas, people are discouraged and still have a lot of soft scores or things like that. Is there anything of that nature?
I'm going to speak for all of America right now. We actually really pride the hobby aspect of it. So much is like, you know, that's the driving force behind like the ITC hobby track is the fact that no matter if people want to be cutthroat, but they also want to have that kind of respect for the game. And at most events, you're going to see that. I mean, and like you may see some pictures. Of course, we're all going to see the outliers or whatever, but at the core of it, we really respect that whole full hobby aspect over here. But if you're talking about what kind of list, like, I think that characteristically we play more aggressive list. There are some grindy type list out there. Don't get me wrong, because it's a good counter. But I think that this, like, 2 out of 3 is going to be more of like an in your face type aggressive list.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. Like, is there a flavor? Is there a culture or a style to lists from a certain place? Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's more towards aggressive styles?
Oh man, getting across the table and like laying, putting hands on your opponent's models is where it's at. Plus, it's also, like the way the game works now is that, you know, the move locking of people. So you know, we've talked about this on previous episodes, but like the physics of the game is one way to kind of show your command of that is a way to kind of show the dominance.
The prowess.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're like, boom, I'm moving here. Oh, I'm consolidating here. Oh, you didn't even see I could touch that guy, dude. You know, whatever. It's not gotcha hammer. It's not the same. It's not like a rules thing or whatever. It's just I'm going to move up here and bam, 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 put you in that submission move. And the game's going to be over around 2 or 3 and you didn't even see it coming. That is a style of play that is prevalent amongst all regions.
That's awesome. So one thing, so I was just having to think of why, like, what are some things that could enforce that mentality? Do you have really good high quality terrain in your area, like in that region?
Most places do, yes. Now, of course, it's a little bit, you know.
I was about to say high quality terrain, like high density of line of sight blocking, good coverage, would really enable more aggressive styles of play, wouldn't it?
Well, you see,
if you were just
like my brand, from the Nova side of things, you know, that terrain style of these two big kind of L shape line of sight blocking things in the middle, and then you got the other side on the way, you know, 4,000, 5,000 miles away on the West Coast. We've got the magic boxes phenomenon. So those two like line of sight blocking phenoms, you know, is well, because of what it did is you look at these things and you get to take your mind out of it. Then you start looking at it not as a aesthetic choice, but as a game mechanic choice. And that's been something that's happened over the last couple of years. And it happened almost like in big shifts, like probably 4 separate shifts of moving towards that mentality of we're now getting away from necessarily beautiful scenic scape tables to stuff that just
functionality. Yeah. Well, that's because tournaments are growing exponentially, and trying to have 200, 300 beautiful, gorgeous, aesthetically pleasing tables at the same event is just not realistic. It's not feasible for a lot of places.
Yeah.
I ran a tournament. We ran it for the past 2 years, and then we ran a doubles tournament as well. And we decided we wanted to put on like the best, the high. We didn't want a real huge event. We wanted a really high quality event. So we had like plays pack, which had like especially handmade tokens in them and smoke markers when, you know, vehicles exploded in 7th edition, and all this amazing crazy stuff that we all handmade. And we built all the terrain ourselves as well, all aesthetically amazing, incredible tables. And it nearly killed us. we got like 30 tables together, and we're like, we're never growing past 60 players now. We're never doing this to ourselves again. But like, that's legitimately what people try and do. Like, they put their heart and soul into trying to make the best possible experience for their players.
That's okay though. Always, like, what's it? SM Battle Reports there in Gibraltar or whatever. I mean, like, every one of those tables is like a singing table.
They're phenomenal. They're absolutely stunning, aren't they?
No, I think I love that too. I mean,
yeah, but I think they can't all be like that. It's an unrealistic expectation to be like, oh, if you want to be a TO, you have to sacrifice half your life every year to make terrain for your thing. Otherwise, it's a band. Sorry. There's my one. There's my one, Paul.
Think about it on the other side, though. Yeah, I'll give you that. Think about it on the other side, though, is that when you are playing on some of these tables that look gorgeous, I mean, like even Adepticon a couple years ago was still trying to kind of exist on 5th edition terrain.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, I even heard about that over here.
Yeah. I mean, good looking stuff. And don't get me wrong, Adepticons are innovators, and I'm never missing the event. It's amazing. It's like they're friends of the show. But I'm just using that as an example that something that may resonate with folks. Is that it's not the way anymore, by the way, but a couple of years ago they did. They were like an edition behind on the terrain, and it factors into like what you take in your list if you know that. And so this function over form, I think is probably one of the best ways to describe it, has a real gameplay effect. And so it's hard for me to mind it if I'm playing, against two L-shaped pieces of cardboard stuck on a flocked other piece of cardboard. Yeah. I'm not going to really mind that because that plays out into the enjoyment of the game, probably more than just the cool looking piece of terrain.
Exactly right. I heard that the Adepticon guys busted their guts and they upped their terrain is at a really, really good standard now.
100% correct. And it was even the case last year. But it's definitely
just think about how many man hours they have to put in to do that.
You see the pictures, follow them. I mean, it's staggering. It is monumental, and it's like when you start talking about this stuff, people go into sweats. They think that, I can just, and I'm certainly not going to call out any events. They think, I can just whip out some terrain in the last month, leading up to the tournament, and that never works out.
Yeah, never does, dude.
It just never works out. And that's what we talk about. It's the third man on the table. Like the function of the terrain has to be a factor, or people will, they'll blame that for whatever the outcome of the game is. And you don't, that's not the impression, the takeaway that you want people from doing it at your event.
So here's a bit of an interesting question. Yeah. Does the meta shape the terrain, or does the terrain shape the meta?
That's tough. What do you think? I've got an opinion, but what do you think?
I think it's absolutely both. So you look at what happened at the start of 8th edition.
That's a cop-out answer. I demand you commit.
Fence sitting. I posed the question and I was wishy-washy. I'm sorry, but you look at the start. I've got a good example at least. Look at the start of this edition. Yeah, when we were playing on 7th edition terrain, what was the best army in the game? It was 5 Storm Ravens and Gilliman.
Yeah.
We had to that meta enforced firstly the ITC bottom floor line of sight blocking, and it invented magic boxes. Then the terrain started influencing the meta. No line of sight shooting. Infantry started becoming a lot better because they could move through ruins, move through the walls. All of a sudden, instead of the Castellan list just being 3 Castellans because they can just shoot everything down, it's a Castellan list with 3 Smash Captains because they can go into boxes and they can deep strike and charge opposition's big units. It's got Guardsmen because Guardsmen can hold ground. They can hide on the bottom floor of ruins. They can win you the game on points, as Brandon Grant did at LVO this year. Mm-hmm. But they still have that Castellan. Right, well, that was my experience. That was my perception. They're both sides of the same coin, and they both influence each other, and it's just a big circle. But what do you think?
Well, I think that if the terrain did not exist, and then it would wallpaper so many units.
Yeah,
so
true.
You need that element. It's not an X factor or whatever, but you need that element in there to actually give variety on the table. And if it didn't exist, you would just see everything you just described. You would see, that.
Yeah, Tau would be the best player, best army in the game, pretty much. Well, someone would cook up a Tau list that was. Oh, sorry. There's this starting to pop up with 9 broadsides. It's just 9 broadsides and shield drones, like 44 shield drones. It's heinous. It's absolutely heinous. You get. Did you ever play Fantasy?
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
So dwarves in 7th and 8th edition, they're pretty much they're the closest comparison to what Tau is in 40k. Whereas they sit there and they play a shooting phase. They don't play a movement phase. They don't play a charge phase. They don't play a psychic phase. They don't play a combat phase. They stand still. They pop Cowion and they play a shooting phase. You play every phase and then you pick up models. You get
that was the worst.
And you pick up models. You move forward.
Worst. Of, 6th edition or whatever.
It's bad. So bad, dude. And that's what that list is. That list is like, you know what? If there was no terrain, that list would be unstoppable.
Yeah, I think you have to have it, and if you're not going to have it, I think you should kind of make sure your players know so they know what they're getting into.
Where do you sit on the every table's the same Nova perception?
I don't care so much about that. I mean, I think you need to have a couple of. I think that both sides of the table should have some line of sight blocking terrain. Okay, let me. I'm going to describe my table here at home.
Okay.
I've got 2 or 3 sets of terrain, probably 2.5 sets of like themed terrain. And the common thing between those sets of terrain is that there are 2 decent sized line of sight blocking things that are going to give lanes of fire on the table. So if you can create a couple of different lanes of fire with your tournament terrain, I think that's, you're in the right direction. And then you want to have some area terrain like a crater or a forest or whatever in what would be the deployment zones. And if you can do that and then some, you're looking for 25% coverage, right? But more than that, you want to create lanes of fire and make sure that every army has at least some cover to put something in. Gets a cover save, gets a game mechanic out of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So the stuff that has to fit the function.
Yeah, absolutely right, dude. I like the lanes of fire. That was a big proponent of 7th edition terrain. You need to have lanes of fire. You need to be able to set up corridors and stuff where you could support things and move forward and stuff like that. It's not that, you still need to support units in 8th edition, but it's not the massive thing it was last one, where especially when like tanks could only fire forwards and they could turn around if they had a turret and they'd fire.
I still feel dirty like firing from a wingtip or something.
Yeah,
I feel like I look at my opponent and I just kind of shrug like, yeah.
It is what it is. Here's one. My perception on the all same terrain thing is, I don't mind it at all. I just don't want it to be every event. I like my immersion. I like being able to, look at my little toy soldiers and pretend they're doing the things I'm making them do. And that's a lot easier to do when every table's not the same. But at the same time, I have no problems with every table being the same. As long as I know that before I go to the event, so I can, it's part of the thinking process.
Yeah, I agree. It factors in, especially when you're trying to squeeze out that last little bit of advantage or whatever out of your list. I mean, out of what you can control, right? And so you look at it as everything's a variable, and if you can rule out one variable, and that's what I tell people when they're making lists. It's like, you just try to slim down what could possibly go wrong, and then terrain factors into that. And you are, look, I'm not going to complain about being on the wrong deployment zone or whatever. Sometimes that's the way you roll. But I think to put a cap on or at least my opinion on this conversation is that the terrain should be functional, and I think you should err in favor of functionality over aesthetic if you have to make that choice.
Well, I think it's at the point now where if a tournament wants themselves to be viewed and perceived as a top level competitive event, that there's no issue if the terrain is purely functional. If you want to have, if you want to lean towards into the soft score side of things, if you want to attract a more diverse cohort of players and you want to position yourself as a tournament for everybody where, that doesn't matter, maybe you go a bit more of the aesthetically pleasing side of things. But if you're just a smash down, drag out, hey, best man wins this tournament, I don't really care what the terrain looks like as long as it's functional, it is what it is.
Good prizes and have a bar.
Exactly right. People will come.
Well, Adam, man, thanks a lot for coming on and sharing your opinions this week and, pitching in for this part of the show. No,
not a problem at all, dude. Absolute pleasure. You're an absolute champion of a dude, and I'll contribute anytime you want me to, man.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to catch up with you at least after the ETC to figure out how you did, what your list was about, what your team took, your approach to that tournament.
You mean you want to interview the champions of ETC 2019?
You can call your shot. That's fine. Yes, I do want to interview the champions, and I'd also like, to talk to you guys.
Fair enough.
I'm kidding. No, I do wish you the best. I do really want to. I'm curious as to your approach to the army design, what you took, because I really like what you said about the Tau and stuff, and to see how that factors into the list that ultimately became what you chose.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll be more than happy to be involved anytime you want. Absolute pleasure. I love what you do. I love how you go about it. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, man. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
We'll do. Talk soon, dude.
other.